Today we are finally going to install the Soul Function 4-point-M brace on the old Q50. They sent us some more substantial, more robust 12mm riv nuts, so that's going to help. If you guys have been following along, you know that we tried to install this last week, but we ran into an issue with spacing because the brace itself was hitting. So I don't know if it was the way the brace was constructed, but it doesn't really matter because I reached out to Soul Function and they jumped right on it and sent me a package of spacers and then some more substantial riv nuts as well. The 12mm as opposed to 10, which came with the kit. The mounting holes in the frame are just a little too large for those smaller 10mm riv nuts, and they just weren't gripping all that well. So the bigger ones are going to ensure that that brace is installed securely. But that's what we're going to do today, so let's whip it out. A couple of basic tools that you're going to want for the installation. I have a vice grip, an adjustable wrench of some kind, a long one, potentially a breaker bar to get some of those bolts or nuts loose from under the car, your ratchet wrench, and a 19mm socket, and possibly a small extension. That's really all you need for tools. Again, having an air impact will be very, very helpful in using the riv nut tool. You know, and a impact socket, 19mm socket for turning this. I did it by hand again with the, I ended up using the vice grip and then just you know, a breaker bar or an extension to turn the nut and the vice grip to hold this portion. And that allowed me to get those riv nuts taken care of. But really the tools for the installation are very, very basic. So you can definitely complete this task on your own. So really the first thing we gotta think about is the riv nut situation, because we wanna make sure we're set to install the bracket. And so this is the tool you get. This is the riv nut itself and the hardware that goes with it. So this will be the mounting hardware, but we gotta get this installed into the frame first. And the way we do that is by using this tool, which is going to essentially crush this down, pinching your pinching it on, you know, pinching the frame between this portion and this portion. So you essentially screw this on until your tool, your bolt, is about flush. There. You just want to make sure it's really threaded on because it's going to be pulling this down, so you want all the threads in there. This portion slides up into the hole, the mounting hole in your frame, which I'll show you. And then you want to hold this just spins freely. Hold this with a wrench. I think it's about 19mm. We just have sort of an adjustable wrench that we're going to be using. You can do it by hand. It's really hard to crush these down. I shouldn't say really hard. The reason it's hard to do it by hand is because you're underneath the car looking up. So it's difficult to keep it pressed up into the hole and hold this and spin this and keep everything level. So that makes it a challenge. What you can do is use a drill, but this again is going to be like a 19mm socket. Use a wrench to hold this in place, press that up there, hold it firmly, and this nut spins, tightening everything. But because this region spins freely, it's not threaded, pulls the threads down because it's tightening. And as it pulls the threads down, it's pulling this grooved metal, it's squishing this grooved metal, flaring it out, making it a rivet. But it's done by a nut, so riv nut, there you go. So you basically have it set up like this. Essentially this is your hole. It would all be flipped upside down obviously because you're under the car. Hold this firm, and then you ratchet it down. As you ratchet it down a little, it starts to bulge it out. You can see it started to bulge just slightly already. I did like just a quarter of a turn. Got one of them in here, and boy, it is a biatch. so hopefully you guys can see this. This nut right here will have to come off. Hopefully I don't need the air impact. And then directly across to the other side. This nut here. So the straight portion goes toward the front of the car, which is in this direction. Driver's side. This is a 3/4 inch socket. I'm not sure what the metric variation is, but this one's a little tighter. There we go. Once you break it loose, it's very easy to take off. Got the Soul Function brace ready to go. It's installed this orientation, front portion or flat straight portion toward the front of the vehicle. And we have our hardware that comes along with the kit, a couple of bolts. We're going to test a couple of spacers, make sure that gives us the clearance we're looking for. When you order this brace, I suggest asking for the 12mm rib nuts right up front. You may have to contact Soul Function for that. If you buy it through Concept Z Performance, they may come with the 10mm rib nuts. If you do request the 12mm rib nuts, you'll need a 19mm socket for the installation hardware. Well, it's hard to see, but on this driver's side, there's maybe a 1/4 inch space between the pipe and the brace. But on the passenger side, there is substantially more room. So I'm just going to use one spacer on the other side. But if you have resonated test pipes and the resonator is toward the bottom portion of the pipe, there's going to be some clearance issues for you. Driver's side, just getting it snug, and then we'll make the adjustments, or we'll make the final, we'll crank them down here once we get them all tightened and level. I'll just move into the back one here. Passenger side, rear one. That's it. There we go. This one I had to kind of force into place. It didn't quite line up. The rib nut probably was a little bit too forward. But, you know, it is what it is. I think we can crank it down. All right, fellas, there she is. Soul Function 4-point brace installed. And then, of course, you guys saw the installation for the lateral braces. It looks good under here. Ended up fitting pretty well. Like I said, there's a lot more clearance on the passenger side than there is on the driver's side. But that's not too big of a deal. A little spacer, we got clearance. Just make sure you communicate with Soul Function, and they'll definitely help you out. They're very responsive, very helpful. They want to make sure your installation is successful. One piece of advice is to tighten the corners sort of, you know, incrementally. So tighten down one corner a little bit, move on to a diagonal corner, tighten that down a little bit, then get the others. You know, just kind of rotate back and forth. Don't you know, really force one corner down and then try to move to the next. You want to do it, like I said, incrementally, just to make sure all of your holes line up and to make sure it's pulled up to the chassis of your vehicle evenly, and you're not tweaking and torquing the brace itself. You want it to be, you know, you don't want it to have preload, essentially. You just want it to fit up nicely. It does sort of force this undershield up, you know, kind of bends it a little bit because it is tight. I hope that's not a source of rattling. I guess we can remove the undershield if we need to, if it rattles, but you know, I don't anticipate that. It pushes it up pretty tight, so it should be okay. But Soul Function brace looking good, relatively easy installation. A little side visual for you. Most miserable part of it, obviously, is those rib nuts. Air impact drill will go a long, long ways. I did it by hand. It was late at night. Didn't want to make the noise with the air compressor and the impact gun. So it's doable, but if you got the air impact, that's the way to go for sure. Again, I ordered these braces through Concept Z Performance, but when you order them from Concept Z, they send you the hardware, and again, it's those 10 millimeter rib nuts. And if you're installing this on the Q50, I'm not sure if it's the same for the G37 or not, but in the Q50's case, you're going to need the 12 millimeter rib nuts. So either tell Concept Z right up front that you need those rib nuts, or make sure you contact Soul Function, let them know you've ordered these braces, or the M brace anyway, from Concept Z, and that you're going to need the 12 millimeter rib nuts. Let them know Speed Culture sent you, by the way, but the installation is pretty easy. You just want to make sure you have the right hardware. Right, another part arrived while we're doing the installation. Can't beat that. But anyway, you'll probably be able to get those 10 millimeter rib nuts to work, to go up there and to hold. But when you go to tighten that brace down and you really crank down on it, it's going to pull those rib nuts out if they're the smaller 10 millimeter ones. They look like this. I'm gonna drop this car down. We're gonna go take her for a cruise and just kind of see if we can feel anything. But stick around, guys, for the full review video, and I'll let you know whether or not it's worth the purchase. I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'll help you out as best I possibly can. Pretty straightforward installation with a few basic tools. I know you can handle it. Thanks for watching, guys. Stick around. More stuff coming for the Q50 and the Ford Explorer, and maybe a little bit for the MDX as well. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.